Sometimes everything in your life needs to fall apart for you to really get it all together. Hi, everyone. This is Wandering the Wild Mess with Heather Morgan. I'm so happy that you're here. This episode, we're going to talk about how sometimes when your life is disrupted with a number of things that are out of your control, that feel chaotic, that might be the perfect time for you to reevaluate the direction you want and desire to go. Because during the chaos, when things are already all over the place and in the air, you're already living in the discomfort, that's your time to pivot, to make that choice, to do the thing that you were afraid to do because it wasn't comfortable. Well, you're already uncomfortable, so let's go. Let's go. I'm going to give you a little background of how I got to this place in Nashville, Tennessee from Utah, but also why I'm even starting this podcast. So I'll take us back. I know we all remember 2020. That, for a lot of people, I think disrupted a lot of normalcies and changed a lot of perspectives and mindsets. So I feel like that's a similar shared experience for people all across the world. At that time, I had worked in corporate America for a global company. So I was working with international teams, and it was crazy to think we're all having this same experience. I think that's such a unique part of everything that transpired in 2020 is that there was a lot of similarities in life's disruption across the entire world, which I couldn't think of another time that there was so much shared human experience. All that to say is after 2020, enter everything in my life changing. So 2021, but probably in a way you wouldn't think. So 2021, we're trying to get a sense of normalcy back. There we are. And what ends up happening for me isn't really this like profound change other than so much came out about mindset for me. I think we all had a little bit of extra time to read and think about if life is ending because the world seemed to be. What is my purpose? What do I want to do? So I think it was like peeling an orange for me. The orange was there. I didn't really like peeling oranges, by the way. Never have. But the point is, I'm peeling this orange and I had just barely opened it, but I hadn't peeled all the layers. But it was open. There was no way. You gotta peel the rest of the orange. No one's just halfway peeling an orange. So it just started in 2021. There I am holding an orange. First peel becomes my relationship with my best friend of over 15 years. There were a number of things that happened that ended up just not being acceptable anymore in my life. And I feel like that's such a hard truth when you love and care for someone to realize that it's not even them, but just others in their life that you cannot be around for your own peace of mind. And so I ended up walking away from or losing this best friendship that I had with someone for over 15 years. And we're not talking about like best friends that when we get together, we're just like we always picked off, like we never left. No, it was every single day I talked to this person. This person knew all about my life, everything I did. And I'm married at the time. And, there's just some things that like a husband doesn't care about hearing the story about, or at least mine didn't. I didn't want to go into every minute detail with him over certain things that I knew he didn't care about, but she did. And she was always there. And then circumstances that prevented our relationship from being what it was. And it was so hard to not have that one person to call when everything in your life was happening. But I threw myself into my job, and I had recently got a promotion into a new role with a new team and just threw myself into work as a distraction for the rest of that year. Of course, that led me to burnout by the beginning of 2022. And I was just looking for something different, but I was so comfortable at where I had been. I'd been with this Fortune 100 company for over 10 years at the time in various roles, but just very comfortable in the culture. And my brand with that company was great. And I just felt like I had to stay. Well, enter a knock at my door via LinkedIn from a leader at another company thinking I'd be a great fit for a role. And I kind of entertained it for a minute and thought, no, it can't be. But I will tell you, if something is meant for you, it will find its way back to you. It won't be hard and you won't force it. So, long story short, this leader reached out to me out of the blue. I entertained it, but I wasn't sure. Enter a few more weeks. That leader decided he was going to leave to a competitor. And so he didn't know what the hiring process would look like after I had started getting excited about the opportunity. So I let that go. But then it drove me to seeking maybe I should look outside this role and this company to something else. So I started interviewing with other companies similar to that in the financial service space, financial technology, and had a couple opportunities in other roles, but the initial one that came to me and that I felt good about ended up coming back. So he stayed at the company, really wanted me to come aboard. I went in, met the leader who is still like a mentor and friend to me. I knew I had to work with her as soon as I met her. And it came back. And I left the company I'd worked for over 10 years to go on a new venture in a new role, doing a lot of things that I hadn't done before, and just trusted that I would crush it. Just trusted it. So I'm at the point in my life, 2022, I've left the Fortune 100 company I'd worked with for 10 years that I was comfortable. I no longer had my very best friend of 15 years plus, and now I'm starting this whole new job. And this was also back in office, which was different because I hadn't worked in the office for a couple of years now at this point. So a lot of change. So I come to the office, I start learning it. It's a company that was a financial technology company that had an acquisition with another large Fortune 100. So it was kind of a new marrying of the corporate culture I was used to with this fintech environment that I absolutely loved. So I'm loving it. I'm thriving. I'm enjoying the challenges. Then enter my birthday a few months later. And I realize that I am getting closer and closer to my dad, the age my dad passed away. And it started making me think about how many birthdays I had left if I lived as long as him. I know that sounds strange, but as all these things are happening, that comes to my mind. Enter me reevaluating who I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. And it pains me to even say this, but so much of my life was already changing, and so many things I had pushed down and swept under the rug, really. So many things. I wanted my life to look perfect. And I feel like we'll talk about this another time, but growing up in Utah and in the Mormon culture, there's a lot of that. We don't talk about the mess. Everything's good. Everything's fine. look at me, my kids are on the straight and narrow. There's a lot of that. And so I just kind of grew up not really wanting to look like I don't have it all together. So I stayed when things were definitely not all together. And I didn't share with anyone really the things that were going on. And these aren't some wildly crazy things like I'm should feel so sad, you know. It wasn't this toxic abusive relationship, but there was very difficult things that I was trying to just pretend didn't exist. And I never brought them to the attention of my family or friends, not because I was scared, because literally did not want to speak unkindly about my husband. He was my best friend, a great human being, and it's not my role as his wife to just bash him or air his dirty laundry. It was our laundry, and instead of cleaning it, I was just putting it under the rug, I guess. I was just, I can't get that stain out. We're not even going to try. He's like, what stain? That's literally what it was like. We were just both pretending because we got along so well and we were really best friends. It was just easier to pretend that everything was good. And I'm great at that. I think a lot of us are. But I finally got to the point where do I want to spend the rest of my life pretending everything's good when I know it's not? And I think that's a question a lot of us come to answer at some point in time in our lives. So later that year, a lot transpired, and that will definitely be another story. But I made the decision one night after so much chaos to leave the marriage. He told me to tell him what I wanted, and I said, I want a divorce. And I left that night, never to sleep in the same room with him again. And that was wild after all of our years being together. I started living with him when I was 25, and it was all I'd ever known. So it was a very difficult transition for me. But I knew it was the right choice because, like I had been reminded, the time's going to pass anyways. So if I didn't do it now, what I want to later, and then I will only have less time left to live the life I wanted. And believe me, I am not at any point saying divorce is the answer. And I wish with all my heart that that didn't have to be the choice for me. I went through so much sadness just knowing that me hurting him had to be the collateral damage of me choosing a life that I want to live that makes me happy. I hate that that disrupted his life, changed his plans. I hated that. And I wish that didn't happen. But I knew in my heart that he deserved someone to love the hell out of him. And that just wasn't me. And I wished so hard that it could be. But I knew, and probably years prior, that it wasn't me. And I didn't want him living the rest of his life with someone that didn't feel that way about him because he absolutely deserves someone that did and does. And I still hope that he finds that if he hasn't already. So there I am leaving, leaving this person, leaving this life, disrupting everything. Now I have this new job that I barely know at a company I've only worked for a few months. And now I'm going through a divorce. What? It seemed like madness. So the rest of that year was really just a chaotic. It almost seems like I don't even know what happened. I don't know who I became. I don't know who I was, but I was everything I wasn't before and more. I made a ton of questionable decisions that do make for good stories, but I look back and think I'm glad they happened, but I'm blown away at the person I became because I didn't know who I was anymore. I tried to think back about who I was before him, but I couldn't even remember that girl. And so I just was no longer his wife. I was just here trying to figure out this new corporate job and trying to lean on a group of amazing girlfriends that most of them couldn't relate because most of them were married and happy, or at least pretending to be like I was. So enter the end of the year. I talked about it a little. Knoxville changed my life, and it allowed me to know I was going to be okay. So I entered 2023 by selling my house and getting ready to move to Nashville. Enter end of February, pack up everything, take my dog, one of my best friends, we drive to Nashville. Great times. I get there to an Airbnb in East Tennessee. That day I get there, March 1st, Morgan Wallen announces that he's doing a free concert at Bridgestone. I just knew I was meant to be here. I was like, I think that was planned. Thank you. Thank you. Had an amazing time, drank way too much moonshine, just owning like, what is Tennessee like? I'm doing all the things. Such a wild time. But then real life had to set in. I still had to work. I didn't know what I was going to be doing or living. I was just going through motions and completely losing my mind. I was just all alone. After my friend left, was there the first week, I had no one. I was working from home virtually. I had no friends, no family. I didn't know anyone. And I'm fine doing things by myself, but I just didn't have anyone. And all of that time alone was overwhelming because your thoughts get really, really loud. But thankfully, the next month was my birthday again, and I had some friends coming into town to visit me. So I got an Airbnb in Hendersonville because I knew that's where I wanted to live. So I wanted to kind of live the life out in Hendersonville. And my friends came and we had the greatest time. We did the Broadway thing. They had never been to Nashville. They were like, "What is this place?" And I'm like, "I know. I know." For some Utah girls, it's wild out here. It was a great time. Those stories will not go untold. But then we enter May. I find this house and I know it's the one. But I have to wait a little bit before I can close. They need to finish up some things. So I stay in South Nashville this time, kind of Berry Hill area, and literally live it up, have the time of my life. That was probably my most fun month in living in Nashville, and I still had no friends. But I had met a couple of guys that are still my friends today that are just amazing human beings that I was able to connect with, and that was great. I went to too many concerts by myself. I remember I went to Fleetwood Mac, Billy Joel, insane. I cried when I was sitting in the audience, or yeah, of course I would. What do you think, I was on stage? I cried when I was sitting there watching the show. literally because I realized I was happier to be there alone than with my ex-husband. And I know that sounds awful, and I don't mean it in any kind of rude way. It was just one of those moments that I'll remember going, it's hard to be alone, but I'm happier this way right now. And that really hit me. Really, really hit me. So then I bought a house. Big news. Absolutely new. I remember like I had looked at a ton of houses in Hendersonville prior. I knew I wanted a white one and I wanted it to be one that looked like Tennessee, not those like new builds that were coming up in Utah back home. It was just a million houses. All the Californians were picking how life looked now. And not a hate on Californians, just they were taking over Utah. I didn't know they were taking over Tennessee too until I got here. But I wanted something that looked like a Tennessee house that wasn't right on top of each other. So I found this one and I remember driving and I'm driving down this 2-lane by the lake and I'm literally praying like and talking to my dad, which I do often, let me know if this is the right house. Let me have a sign. And as I'm driving down the road, I pull in and I feel it, but I get inside and there's a coat rack in the corner and I look and there's a Cubs hat. And if you know me, I'm a Cubs fan. My dad grew up in Illinois. My mom's a big Cubs fan. Baseball signed by Ernie Banks, a whole big thing. And I had been to tons of houses and had not seen anybody with Cubs memorabilia. I just knew it was the sign. On top of how the energy in the home made me feel. Big energy girl. So I was like, this is it. Got my house. So excited. Had nothing, nothing. I had left everything for my ex. I literally had nothing. Like not even a bed. I had nothing. So that was fun. I remember buying like a mattress off Amazon so it could be delivered quickly so I wouldn't have to sleep on the floor, but I had nothing. It was just all starting fresh. Literally, no, not even a couch. I remember sitting on the box that the mattress was in to eat my first meal there. I don't even know what I cooked. I might have bought a couple of pans or something from Costco, but it was actually an amazing time because it was like, here I am, my brand new life. I have no things, just me and the dog. And it felt so nice when I think back. But then work got busy and I realized that I was doing a lot of what I didn't love at that moment. I had just changed my whole life to move to Tennessee, and I still didn't have any friends because I was at the house working all the time. And I didn't really have a life yet. And that's why I left to have a new life. But now I just had the same one alone in a different place. So after a lot of thought and consideration, I decided to leave my corporate job. And we'll leave it there for now. So much more to come. Can't wait for you to continue to wander this wild mess with me. Until next time, thanks for listening.